Okay, Jim Ryan, veteran of World War II, Army Air Corps, or Army Air Force. Am I correct? Why don't you just go ahead and start with your life and then move me into the military and talk to me in your own words.
Well, I was,
Look at me.
I was born in a little town back in Virginia, Western Virginia. It's called Pardee, Virginia. And people think it's way in the middle of Virginia, but it's really on the Kentucky border. And Dad was a coal miner. And when I was 8 years old, my father had died. And so my mother figured she'd get away from her family, which we were all hillbillies. And so we got in a Moose Lodge, and Dad was a member of the Moose. So we were sent to Mooseheart, Illinois. And from 8-year-old, when I was 8 years old, I stayed there 4 years in Mooseheart with Mother. And we moved north to Batavia, Illinois, which is just a mile of the Mooseheart. And from there on, I finished my high school education. Then I went to the University of Illinois for 2 years. So in 1936, I had a friend who was going to Purdue, but he used to live close to me in Batavia. And he decided to go west, so I decided to go west too. So I jumped in the car with him, and off we went. And I ended up finally in Orange County. From Orange County, I learned to peck oranges. So I decided to be a fruit tramp for a while. And I had gotten me an old 24 Buick, and it made it into a camper and everything at that time. So I had a little facilities, just moved from place to place. So I packed oranges in Orange County, moved up here to Terabella, and got a job there for the winter. Packed oranges there, and then I just traveled a route for I did this for almost about 4 years. And then I realized the war was coming on at that time, so I had 2 years of college, and they were taking students, but I was almost 26 years old. So I figured I'd better get my name in. So I got my name in, and consequently, in October of 1940, I was a cadet going to pilot training at Hemet, California, where they had a little flying school called Ryan Flying School. So there was not too many of the schools at that time. So I got my 50 hours in there in a Stearman, and I thought I was going to go on to basic, but those two of those fellows had gotten to be 26 years old at that time, so they figured we were a little too old, I guess, or something, or they didn't have the facilities. So I went on to Maxwell Field. They sent me to Maxwell Field,
And that was,
which was a pool for cadets in those while they got them ready to go to different schools that they opened up.
and Maxwell Field is in what state?
Maxwell Field is Alabama.
Alabama.
And it was a real good place. We had awful good eating, but I got awful tired of eating grits, which is a favorite food of the South. But from there, I went on to Florida, where we had at Pan American Airways. They were teaching navigation at the time. They didn't have hardly any school for teaching navigation at the time. So consequently, I spent 3 months at the University of Florida, Corps of Cables. And we flew in the old 1924 Sikorsky seaplanes to get a navigation training. They took quite a bit of water at a time, but we got through 50 hours there of training. And when that was over, I with two other boys, we were sent to Alaska as cadets.
And this is 1941 by now?
This is 1941.
Before Pearl Harbor?
Before Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
And in July, we got our orders, and we went by boat from old San Francisco by boat up through the inlet to Amador Field in Alaska at that time. They'd just gotten a part of the field there. At that time, the planes that we were flying and everything were B-18s. A lot of these I can't tell you. I can just tell you the numbers on them.
That's all right.
And B-18 was our main bomber at the time.
That was a two-engine or
Two engine. And we had a composite squadron, they called it. They called it the 28 Composite Squadron. It consisted of, looking on my list, I don't think we had, that I had at that time, of the personnel. We probably maybe had at the most 150 men. This is officers only. But they also included some of Fort Richardson's personnel, the Army. And at that time, you got to remember, we were the Army Air Force. And the Army still had control over us. And we had one B-10 there, and one little widget, which was a little seaplane, and one old B-10. Now the B-10 is the ones they went around, the world around flyers went around. And just bring another little point, when I was at Moose Heart, Illinois, the fellow that was in charge of Moose Heart was James J. Davis, who was Secretary of Labor. So he could get anybody he wanted to come over Moose Heart and drop something. So they all flew over Moose Heart at that time. And they had 3 flyers flew over, but later on I read only 2 really got there. So the third flyer had gotten not to Newfoundland, but they'd let him fly too, so that's the reason there was 3. And so I got into aviation early, watched that, because they had the youngest flyer that ever wanted to come there and everything, so he was able to get anybody he wanted to come. But to get back to Alaska, we had later on, so we didn't get the war started until December. And before December, I was flying with B-18s and things as a navigator and as a cadet. And most all the pilots at that time, you're talking about people who were only second lieutenants. The first lieutenant was really high ranking. And a major, boy, he's in control of the whole thing, and the lieutenant colonel had charge of all the Air Force. And General Buckner, he was our head man at that time. And I used to fly with him around occasionally. He was a real nice old guy. And one time I offered him my seat, and he said, "Oh, no, son, you keep your seat. You just keep navigating." So from then on, I never said anything. I just took care of it. But one of the first things I had to do was go to Nome at that time, which was quite interesting because that's time the Russians came in and first started ferrying planes backwards and forth across the country. And at this time, I learned a lot about navigation, about winds, different things. We used to fly on an international date line. So occasionally we'd just get blown off course a little bit and land up in Russia. It wasn't our fault, but we never did have to say that we were there. So consequently, I learned a lot too there. And when the Russians came through, there were 3 that looked like big old PBYs. I got some beautiful pictures of it at the time because I had a little Kodak Bantam Special, and it was a real fine little camera. And so I managed to get a few pictures of it. And I do have those around sometime if anybody wants to see them. And we were there about a month, so we were flying every day.